Good morning and welcome to my motor compartment tech talk. So I wanted to go over kind of the components that are inside what used to be the engine bay. So this 1964 Rambler Classic originally came with a cast iron inline 6-cylinder that didn't run particularly well and was removed and discarded. So the first thing you notice right away, of course, is the high voltage junction box. So that is what has all of the contactors for the positive cables, the negative cables, the pre-charge circuit. Also has a contactor for the heater. And that's what these are here. So when each of these are closed, then these lights will light up. So you just have kind of a quick visual representation of what contactors are closed. And, you know, of course, I dressed it up a little bit with some faux original Rambler content. Rambler like to call things cruise command and whatnot, so I called this amp command. And connected to this, you can see that this is all labeled. This is the lines to the charger, the DC-DC converter. This is a data line down here. This is where the Tesla air compressor connects, and this is where my hot start block heater connects, and this is a connection for USB. There is an Arduino in there which controls my pre-charge circuit and also turning on the heat via CAN from my VCU inside, so I can connect to this without opening the box and make changes if I want. Then this is the combination 6.6 kilowatt charger and I believe it's a 1.5 kilowatt DC-DC converter. This came from Stealth EV, and I liked this one because it's a very low profile. It fits very nicely under the hood, and it's a combo unit, so I don't have to have two different units. It is liquid cooled, and you can see all the various connections that it goes out. It just needs a ACC signal in order to turn on the DC converter. So that goes through a circuit breaker here and just goes straight to my 12-volt battery. Of course, you still need a 12-volt battery to run things. Over here, I've got two different coolant loops, one just for the batteries and one for all the electronics. So it goes through the DC-DC converter, through the Lexus inverter, which is underneath my battery box, which is what this is, and then through the transmission, and then comes back to you can't really see it here, but underneath there, if I can get it, you can't really see that one, but underneath the battery box is kind of a long, skinny cooler which came out of a Lexus GS450 actually. And then this is my cooler for the batteries and my AC condenser and fan, and the batteries have a fan on it as well that come on at a certain temperature. Over here we've got the eye booster out of a Tesla Model 3, and I've connected a brake reservoir out of a Honda CR-V because that was just perfect for my setup. All I had to get was these little brackets and connect it all together. This back here is a high voltage relay. So the BMS sends a signal out which allows the charger to come on, and this just sort of interrupts the AC line going to the charger. I added electric wipers, I added electric washers which go up to my washer nozzles that I added to the car. And then of course this is my electric washer pump here. Got the original Rambler horns. This is my dryer for the AC. This is an overflow for the heater. And you can see kind of down in there, that long silver cylinder down in here is a hot start block heater. And that's a 4 kilowatt heater, which heats up this antifreeze and blows through my HVAC system, which is a Restor mod system. I've got fuse block out here, which is all AC accessory power. This is a relay which comes from the BMS, which basically says, hey, you're okay to drive, and it turns this on, which gives power to my high voltage junction box. So this doesn't get any 12-volt power to turn anything on unless the BMS says everything is okay. Got some live power over here for relays. This relay goes to the DC-DC converter so that whenever I'm charging, it turns on the DC-DC converter, because whenever I'm charging, obviously the coolant pump for this comes on and possibly the fan, and I don't want to run down my 12-volt battery. So if I'm plugged in and charging, even though the high voltage junction box doesn't come on, the DC converter will, and will provide power to my 12-volt battery. I do have some good safety features in here as well. This here is a it's a fuel pump shutoff valve out of some sort of a Ford, but basically, if it gets a big enough jolt, it'll pop the little circuit in there, and it'll interrupt the power that goes to the high voltage junction box. Then, of course, I've got a giant turn off here. I've got, professional connections where all the high voltage goes. Everything is done with professional connections. This big black box underneath, of course, is my front battery box, and that holds 6 of the 12 Tesla modules out of a Mercedes B250E, not this one, but a different one. And that's where all of my, that's where the front battery box is. I've got a plexiglass cover on the front. You can kind of see it here, so you can kind of see the coolant lines and things. And this is so I can just see inside and make sure I'm not getting any leaks or anything. And I've had to get in there a couple times because I've had some issues with the battery wires. And like I said, I've got relays kind of all over. This is a relay for the battery fan, which is coming from the BMS. If the battery temperatures get over a certain temperature, it'll turn on the fan for this. This is actually from the dryer. So the dryer, obviously, if it detects the AC pressure is too high, it'll turn on the fan for the AC condenser. And then the rest of this is pretty standard Rambler, with the exception of the LED headlights that I put in. So that pretty much sums up what's inside the motor bay. If you have any questions, just let me know and I'll be sure to answer them.